Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second session in American English Live Series 24. We're so excited that each of you are here with us today. My name is Kate. Great to see everybody. And I'll be with you today along with my colleague behind the scenes, Javid, who will be the moderator, helping answer your questions and responding to your comments during the session. We wanted to let you know that today's session will be recorded. We wanted to let you know that today's session will be recorded and shared across various platforms. By attending and adding your comments to the chat section during today's webinar, your first name, country, and/or comment may be included in the video recording. By participating, you consent to your appearance in the recording and its use for purposes related to the work or business of FHI 360 and the U.S. Department of State. If you do not want to appear in the recording, please do not share any comments in the chat box during the live webinar. Throughout Series 24, we're exploring a variety of topics related to teaching English through American media, games, and creative activities in celebration of the United States' 250th birthday. We hope you're able to use the practical ideas we share. Here's what to expect today. The session is about 60 minutes long. The presenter will present the material, and I, as your host, will ask questions and make comments too. But we really hope to hear from you, our audience, so that we can address your ideas and experiences. Please share your thoughts using the chat box. And now for today's webinar, Photography as Art and Media, Lenses into American Language and Culture. This interactive webinar will demonstrate how photography offers teachers a flexible, engaging way to enrich English instruction by sparking vocabulary growth, critical thinking, and meaningful discussions of U.S. themes such as progress, nature, and innovation. We'll explore free photo archives and classroom-ready activities that build visual literacy and identify ways to customize photo-based lessons for different contexts. By the end of the session, participants will walk away with student-centered techniques that bring language to life through visual storytelling. And now we're pleased to introduce our presenters, Conan Kmiecik and David Bartsch. Conan is an English lecturer and course lead at Qatar University. He is an experienced university lecturer with a background in teaching ESL, EFL, English composition, literature, and entrepreneurial education. In 2025, he served as a U.S. Department of State English language specialist and completed a project at the language village of Mahdia in Tunisia. David has been an English lecturer at Qatar University since 2007. He earned his MATESOL degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in the United States. In addition to teaching English for academic purposes, English for specific purposes, and 4 skills courses in blended, task-based, and traditional formats, he has worked extensively with computer-assisted language learning. Welcome, Conan and David. We're so happy to have you here with us today.
Good evening, everyone. Greetings from Qatar. My name is Conan Kmiecik, and originally I'm from Wisconsin. That's a state in the northern part of the U.S. I've been living and working in Doha now for about 10 years, and I'm excited to be here.
My name is David Bartsch, and I'm originally from Iowa, a rural state in the central part of the U.S. I've been living and working in Doha for almost 20 years now. I'm excited to be here as well. As you might see from our presentation tonight, we're talking about photography. And if you look behind us, all the photos behind us are photos that we've taken, mostly that Conan's taken. He's very good at it. And so a couple of them are mine. And so we wanted to show a little bit of our stuff to you so you can see what we can do.
Okay. So as Dave mentioned, we practice photography and we also teach English. And today we hope to show you why photographs deserve a renewed place in the English language classroom. So in today's session, we will explore how visual literacy can be developed through photography. We will practice activities that build visual literacy and language skills. And we'll consider how to adapt photo-based tasks for different teaching contexts. We've generated a lot of information. However, since our webinar time is limited, we have several deeper dives that you can explore later after the presentation.
To get started, we'd like you to think for yourself, have you ever used photography in English teaching before? And if so, We'd like you to type in the chat 3 words that describe your experience using photography in the classroom.
Yeah, let us know, everybody. If you have used photography in your English classroom before, let us know, and then tell us 3 words how you would describe that experience. So let us know. I know when I was in the classroom, I used to use photographs as warm-ups for people to write sentences as they came into the classroom. And then we would talk about those sentences, whether they were correct. Let's see, Ripio Man also says he uses them to warm up. Nice. Photography experience is exciting, creative, and unique from Higher Grace. Pedro says he uses photography. Lucia says, I have used it. It's great to activate vocabulary and to spot details. I usually use my childhood photographs to teach about my family. How nice. From Akerke, Sultan Murat. Very nice. I use them in my LMS as I teach online. Very cool. From Hikma. And let's see, 1 or 2 more. Irene says engaging, fun, and creative are the 3 words. And Ferengi says creative, interesting, and fun. And Mariana says she uses photos for games in the classroom. So thanks for those wonderful ideas, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. So nowadays, all around the world, we live in a media-rich environment, and this includes traditional media such as books, newspapers, television, and movies, as well as digital media such as the internet, social media, podcasts. Photography is a medium that exists in both the traditional analog and contemporary digital formats. And as Goldstein reminds us, all media needs to be interpreted critically and creatively. The interpretation of images, including photography, is known as visual literacy. Just as we live in a multimedia world, we need to possess multiple literacies to interpret the many messages we encounter each day. This is especially important in the current digital age as literacies constantly overlap and evolve. This webinar itself is a clear example of a multimodal text. You are engaging with the spoken language or spoken words. There's text on the screen, images, and video of Dave and me. Your minds are processing all these inputs at the same time. And with the advent of smartphones, consumers now have technology with more computing power than the computers used during the 1960s moon landings. These devices continue to grow more powerful each year and have allowed users to become more than passive media consumers. Today, almost everyone can act as a content creator using the camera built into their phone, and this contributes to the ever-growing online media landscape.
To get specifically into the ESL content, we'd like to introduce you to something called Bloom's taxonomy. Now, maybe you've heard of it. It's pretty famous. It's been around a long time, but perhaps you haven't. And we think this is a great tool to help you evaluate, particularly what we're doing here with the activities today with photography, but it's also useful in a large number of ESL contexts. And we hope that you'll learn more about it and use it along the way. So you can see that it starts at the bottom with lower level vocabulary and cognitive processes, and then moves up to higher levels of critical thinking that require lower frequency vocabulary. So we've included some representative verbs for each level. So for example, at the bottom, we've got remember. So then some related verbs could be highlight or define. And then we move up. So slightly more interesting, slightly more complicated, understand, not just remember, but understand. So summarize. And then we get into apply, for example, choose and examine, analyze, categorize and contrast. And then we're getting higher and higher on the list. And so getting more and more critical thinking involved, harder grammar that needs to be used in order to describe it, and words like defend and prioritize. And then finally at the top, where students are creating their own materials, they're building and they're devising. And so we think this would be a great tool for you to use, not just for today, but for other aspects as well. If you check on the internet, there are lots and lots of lists for different uses of this taxonomy, including things with written and spoken and different media. So it's worth checking out.
So in our webinar, Dave and I explicitly advocate for the development of visual literacy alongside English language teaching. As you can see, these levels roughly map onto Cepher levels. However, it's important to acknowledge that higher order visual literacy activities often require higher levels of English proficiency. This is for students to express their ideas effectively. For this reason, the intended visual literacy output of students must be carefully aligned with their L2 English abilities. If you're interested in exploring this more, we'll show you a chart later with more information in the presentation.
So then the question becomes, why should we incorporate photography into the English language classroom? Well, as most of you, if you think about it for a moment, we engage with images of different kinds all day, every day. We're on our phones all the time. We're scrolling, we see media, we see web pages. And so practically everybody engages with images all day, every day anyway. And so it's a natural entry into working with students, helps build visual literacy and support language development. As Sontag said back in the 1970s, to collect photographs is to collect the world. So making photographs isn't just, there's creativity involved, there are choices involved, there's personality involved. It's not just with the photographer, a photograph is an encounter with the photographer. It's an event in and of itself, and people show who they are and what they value by what they show through photographs. And that was true in the 1970s, when taking photos was a lot more difficult and expensive than it is now. However, now almost everyone's phone has a camera, and just makes it so much easier for everybody to take photos. You might say that photography is ubiquitous. Almost everybody has access to it. And not only does that, but perhaps in case you haven't thought about it, but the phones that we have in our modern cameras, particularly some of the higher end models, are really extremely powerful, where they're able to take shots that even professional equipment couldn't take even a few years ago. So we really have these powerful, powerful tools that we carry around everywhere we go. And as a result, you might say that art and media have become substantially democratized, with almost everybody being able to participate. What do you think about that, Conan?
Well, yeah, I think now there's hardly a person on the earth without a phone, and most of those phones have cameras. And people use those cameras to take pictures of things of their everyday life, like their coffee, like an interesting sign, maybe even like their friends. Whereas maybe 200 years ago, photography was something that was only available to people who were rich and who had an interest in on this kind of esoteric art endeavor. So I would say, yeah, photography is now, of the masses.
And so now when we're taking photos, we can, like referencing the Sontag quote, it's not just a picture all by itself. We can see people's cultures, values, and social issues. And of course, we're both from the U.S., and so we highlight U.S. cultural values and social issues. But you, wherever you happen to be around the world, and whatever background you have, you can focus on those, and you can help your students understand and demonstrate their culture, values, and social issues through photography as well. And then because photography is both personal and universal, that makes it a natural resource for language teaching. So we've specifically spent some time here at the beginning trying to give you some rationale. Why should we use photography at all? And now we're going to go into a little bit more of a technical side of things, and we're going to show activities that build visual literacy and language skills.
Real quickly, I'm going to interrupt to just share a couple of nice comments we have coming in, responding to your presentation. Let's see. Pedro says, interpreting photographer makes literacy strong. Communication gets challenging and interesting. Students go from remembering to creating language properly. Very nice comment. Thank you for that. And Professor Mauricio says, in my region, we have an oral tradition and images are fundamental for efficient English learning. And Gustavo says, I use family photos to explain background. So those are all really great comments and wonderful ways to hear you're using or incorporating photos in your classroom. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. And so we're going to get into some activities, but maybe some of you are wondering where you can find photos online. And later in the presentation, we will discuss some of the resources that we think you should consider. So in this part of the webinar, we'll take you through two activities that you can adapt to your own teaching context. These activities are designed to help your students acquire language needed to analyze photos. So before we begin, take a moment to think about the following question. How can understanding photos help teachers discuss them with students? Okay, so while you're typing, Dave, what have you found?
So, like with practically everything, the more we understand, the better questions we can ask, and the more we can understand and draw conclusions and use critical thinking. And I was noticing that Karima said in the chat, I'd like to know which are the best questions to ask our students for instructing them to describe a photo. And we'll be giving some specific examples of that along the way. So thanks for that question, Karima.
So Kate, what responses are coming from the audience?
Yeah, we have some great responses as usual coming in. Now I lost my place. Here we go. Learners, when the quality of photos are high, the students get really engaged. Wonderful. Open Alumni, Carrick wrote that. Let's see, learners get information orally and visually, so using both of them together makes teaching more obtainable. Wonderful. Let's see, it gives clues for answers. Helps them understand what photos are related or how they're related to each other. An image is worth 1,000 words from Professor Mauricio. And photos or any visual things make students more engaged from Mooney. And it improves their imagination from Errata. Very nice. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. So Dave and I are experienced photographers, and we have spent decades developing our photographic vocabulary. However, your students, and possibly some of you, have not yet acquired this jargon. And so a useful starting point is understanding the game being played. If you look at these two photos, they may seem similar at first. However, when you look closer, you'll notice differences in the two games being played. Someone who notices details can get hints about what's going on. Dave, what do you notice?
So I grew up in a family that enjoyed watching American football. And so if I look at the photo with the guy in red, then I notice immediately that's an American football uniform, including pads and helmets. And that looks, and of course I can see the shape of the ball. That's all very, very familiar. So I know exactly what's going on. And then but if I look at the picture on the other side, the black and white, and it's kind of the same. It's men and men reaching for a ball in the air, but the uniforms look different, and so I don't know what's going on, and that means there must be some sort of a different game being played with different rules, different strategies.
Okay, so thanks, Dave. In sports, there are different games with different rules. And when students have increased vocabulary and understanding, they can increase their language use and deepen the analysis they do. This moves them further up the Bloom's taxonomy pyramid. So photography has different games as well, and these are called genres. A genre is a category within a medium. So there are genres in music, movies, and other art forms. On the screen, you can see 5 sample photographic genres. This includes advertisement, journalism, portraiture, fashion, and wildlife. Most of you have likely been exposed to these genres throughout your lives and may already have an intuitive sense of how they work. There are different rules that apply to each genre and cause them to function the way they do. So now we're going to play a game. This is called Guess the Genre. And here you can see the activity objectives and teacher preparations. Now on this screen, we have the instructions, and we'll have similar objectives, preparations, and instructions for each activity we mentioned. So you can easily come back and check the PDF of the presentation later. All right, so on the screen, there are 3 photographic genres and 3 photo images. I would like you to type the number in the chat that corresponds with the image. And under each image, there's a letter. So you can easily put like a number and a letter. And we're going to do this for all 3 images. So let's type in the chat, everyone, and let's see if you can identify the genre on the screen.
Yeah, let us know, everybody. We have those genres there. 1, journalism, 2, portrait, 3, advertisement, and then you have the 3 photos to see And then you can match the genre with the photo. So what do you think? Let us know in the chat. Let me go over here. Let's see. So you can write something like A2 or something like that. What do you have for us, everybody? What do you think?
Mm.
All right, so we have some answers coming in. We have a Kerke Sultan who says number one. Oh, the first one is portrait. The second one, B, is an advertisement. And the third one, C, is journalism. Let's see. We have a lot of people saying similar answers. A is 2, B is 1, and C is 3. We have all sorts of people coming up with a combination of those answers. Ayede says a portrait is A, B, advertisement, and C is journalism. Wonderful. So how did they do, Conan and David?
Well, let's go through the answers then. So the picture of journalism, number one, that is C. So those of you who guessed C, that's correct. And with journalism, the photo is to record a real event or situation. It's not necessarily beautiful or artistic, although the composition can be interesting and engaging. But it's meant to record the actual event. And it may be difficult to understand without, further background context. Here you see people gathering. There seems to be some kind of protest or maybe like a strike. We don't know exactly. So the next example is advertisement. And I'm sure that you've encountered advertisement, anytime you stepped on social media or you stepped in the street. These types of photos are meant to promote a product and they show a lifestyle or a feeling connected to the product. So they're trying to sell you something. And often these are idealistic and not fully realistic. Oftentimes, advertisement is accused of using Photoshop heavily in order to enhance the appeal. And the last one is portrait, which is A. Now, Dave, I thought portraits were typically of people's faces.
Often that's clearly that's often true, but at the same time, sometimes it's also interesting to have different aspects of them. And so in this case, we can see in this portrait, it's an old woman. We can tell by the hands, by the skin type, and also even without the hands, we can see that the dress, the material is perhaps not modern. And so someone who is an expert in materials or in fashion could even have some idea of when or where this is. And so that's an interesting way to look at portraiture in a slightly different way.
Okay, so if you got all the answers correct, good job, everyone.
You may be wondering why worry about genres. Well, it builds, so talking about genres builds awareness of different kinds of communication happening with photos. And of course, that's part of the visual literacy skills. And also, this is encouraging critical thinking and meaningful language use.
Okay. So if you're interested in exploring genres more or in teaching your students about them, this deeper dive lists a number of genres, and each genre requires different combinations of skills and equipment. So teachers can allow students freedom to choose the projects if they want to explore these genres based on their interests. And students can use their language skills to explain how they shot the genre-specific images, using their phone, and then describe what they were hoping to achieve. So now I'd like you to type in the chat which genre would you introduce into your first into your class. And while we're waiting for your answers, you might be surprised when your students dive into more advanced things like night photography or macro or micro photography, possibly even like a wildlife photography.
And the interesting thing is that we often have these presets on our phones already. And so you don't even necessarily have to do anything different. You already have that perhaps buried a little bit deep in the settings on your phone, on your camera on your phone.
So this could be a good exercise to explore the functionality of your phones. Kate, what are people saying?
Yeah, people are saying that they would include or start with events and food,
Hmm.
food, travel, and sports. Mariana says fashion with teens.
Hmm.
Let's see. Um, DDS Kabdiel says street. A lot of other people saying food and sports. things that are really popular with our students and with everybody. For sports, fashion, food, travel. And Gustavo says it would be based on students' interests and based on the class topic. The genre might change depending on those two things. So those are great. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
So we've been talking about genres already so far, but then once you get into things a little bit further, when you learn the particulars of a game, you realize that there are different plays, there are different reasons why different types of plays happen at different points in the game. And so it's important to understand the rules of the game. And it's the same way in photography. Uh, uh, there are different techniques that are used to create different effects in photography. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time doing that. But you may be wondering, why should I bother learning photography techniques? It's a fair question. So what do you think? How does understanding how an image is constructed change how students interpret it? Let us know what you think.
Yeah, what might help her? How would students be able to interpret better or differently if they understand how an image is constructed? What do you think, everybody? Let's see here. People are continuing to share some of the genres they would use. People in everyday life, family, school, work, and friends. They can have more details to help them guess about some of the vocabulary or topics. Wonderful. What else do we have here? How might it help students to understand how an image is constructed? What do you think? It gives them the reason behind its nature. I think that's great. Yeah, it gives more of an idea of what goes behind it, maybe helping them think about the author, developing those critical thinking skills, thinking about who that person is and why they would take that kind of photograph. Let's see. It gives them context to find out the objective of the picture. That's a great response. Again, maybe depending on who took it, you might have a different viewpoint or a different reason for taking photos of a certain thing. So wonderful. Thanks, everybody.
And so photographic techniques help us understand what we notice first, what we look at longer, and how we understand an image. It provides students with vocabulary and tools to help explain their ideas and supports students in thinking critically about the images. So while there are many techniques that photographers employ, we decided to focus on three relatively simple ones. And so we'll start with negative space, and we'll talk briefly about leading lines and then do framing. So to start off with negative space, negative simply means having extra space around something. So something like what's the point of the photo and what's not the point of the photo. It's the empty space around the subject. And we can see the blue space, around the coffee cup, and having all that empty space there draws us into the middle of the photo. And then, for example, you might realize, wait a second, it's a coffee cup, but there's nothing in the coffee cup. So what exactly is going on? So the negative space helps draw our attention there. Another thing that can help us is with a concept called leading lines. And so we can see that the trees are heading back and toward the distance, and the blue lines show us that's going that way. And perhaps the dog is there. He's excited to take us on a journey down through a path in the woods. So leading lines lead our eyes to the main subject of a visual composition. And then the last one is called framing. And just like you often have a physical frame around a photograph hanging on your wall or perhaps on your desk. And so we can have a part of the image itself which frames. And so in this case, the brown part of the foliage kind of parts in the middle. And so it draws our eye up and toward the middle and looks like, oh, well, that's some sort of a palm tree, and it's further away, and we're kind of drawn into the photo with the framing with the light brown foliage.
All right. So now that Dave has taught us about different techniques, we're going to play a different game, and this is called Spot the Technique. And here are the objectives and the preparation. They're very similar to the Guess the Genre activity, so it's very easy to prepare. And on the next slide, all right, you can see the instructions. So very basic. So this time, Kate's going to play the game with me.
Yep,
Kate, are you
sounds
ready?
good. I am. I'm ready.
All right, so here's an image that I've selected, and I'm going to highlight parts of the image with a number, and you need to tell me which technique you see. And we have A, framing, B, leading lines, and C, negative space. Kate, are you ready?
Yep, sounds good.
All right, so the first
Mhm.
number, what do you think this is?
I think this is about the leading lines, B.
All right, and you are correct. All right, so your eye is being led up and down, or down and up to in the middle of the image. You ready for the next one?
I am. I'm ready.
All right, so what is this area marked number 2?
I think based on the example David showed, I think this is negative space, the dark area that's not highlighting anything in the picture.
Right, just a silhouette of the foliage. All right, nice job. And the last one, this might be easy, but what is this area number 3?
I think this is how it's framed. So, sort of helping to bring your focus to a certain part of the photo. Framing,
Good.
I think.
Right. So the
Mhm.
negative space is forcing you to study the visuals in the middle of the image. So Kate, I think you're ready to become a photo critic.
Oh, wow, cool.
So now we have a deeper dive activity. If you want to learn more, here's some things you can look up. So there are different titles, different things to think about. So if you look on the upper right-hand side, there's the shell, and then you see the overlay, and that has a couple different names. One of them is the Fibonacci sequence, also known as the golden ratio. And it's a ratio that seems to keep appearing in different places in nature and in the world we find around us. So that's something that you can check out. Also, in the lower right-hand corner, we've got something called the rule of thirds. There's the pink overlay. It's a 3 by 3 grid. And in this case, we've got the fish in the middle of the sea anemone creatures. And so the fish is in the middle of in the middle of the grid, but you'll find that sometimes things are interesting if they're in other quadrants of the grid, and that can be very helpful. And of course, well, yes. So which ones are you familiar with? Please type your answer in the chat. And of course, while you're thinking about that, which ones are you familiar with or might like to learn more about? So photographs are often a combination of several different techniques. So of course, like with the fish and the sea anemones, we've got filling the frame, we've got some contrast going on, and different things like that. So often there's unique combinations of things.
So Kate, what are people saying?
Yeah, which ones are you familiar with, everybody? We have a few people saying they're familiar with framing. And then I'm going to go ahead and read a few other comments that had come in that didn't have a chance while we're looking for those. Photography helps students become active creators, not just media consumers. Great comment. Teachers can encourage student participation and have them use vocabulary to describe to improve their speaking skills. Another great one. And then we have people saying they are familiar with the rule of thirds. Um, Innocent says that they're familiar with leading lines. Betty says she's familiar with contrast. And Shima says familiar with leading lines and framing.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
So you may be wondering, okay, well, we've been spending time on kind of the technical aspects and giving some vocabulary about photography, but that's not necessarily what you were expecting maybe when you came to this presentation today. So we wanted to give you some specific language practice activities that you can use in your classroom, right? So to start off with, we have an activity called the time travel activity. And so we've got the objectives and preparation on the screen. So take a quick scan over those. And then on the next page, we have the instructions. So the teacher will select 2 photographs, hopefully from the same place from different time periods. And then teachers put students into pairs, and then they look at the pictures and compare them. And then the language output could either be written or verbal comparing the two. So we thought we'd do this together between Kate and Conan.
Okay,
You ready to go?
I am.
So here are two photos, and perhaps they're of the same place. We're not exactly sure, but they look kind of similar. They look related. So Conan and Kate, if you could chat just for a few moments in the role of maybe intermediate students. So go ahead and what do you see? What do you see? Things that are the same, things that are different between them.
Kate, why don't you go first?
Sounds good. Yeah. Well, they both look like cities, and like you said, David, it might be the same city, just one in the past and one more modern day. The second one is much more colorful, and the first one looks like it was taken with an older camera because of the black and white nature of it. So those are some of my observations.
Right. Yeah, I think that the brown one seems older. Um, it just seems like there's older things in there. And the colorful one, it seems very new. I think I recognize this place. It might be Times Square in New York. And I'm not sure if the old picture is of Times Square in the past, but it could be. But it looks very New Yorkish to me.
So based on what you
Mhm.
guys can see in the photos, do you think that in both photos, is that the place where people live, or are they coming in from somewhere else?
To me, it looks like the first photo, they might live there. In the second photo, it seems more like a place of business. So it
Mm.
might have evolved and changed over the years from maybe a little bit more residential to a little bit more of a place of business, although there are lots of business ads in the first one.
Mm.
Um, and the transportation seems to be different. I mostly notice walking in the first one, and I see a lot of cars in the second one.
Yeah, I think that I like your word residential because I can see on the building in the brown there are fire escapes. It looks like those are for people to, who need to get out of the building who live there. In the picture, the colorful picture, I see skyscrapers, and typically, I think in New York, people don't live in skyscrapers, but people do business there.
So if you had to take a guess, what do you think what would make some of the changes that you see between the two pictures? What are some of without knowing the specific history of the particular places, but what kind of social changes or historical changes happened to cause some of these changes to happen, as far as you can tell?
Hmm.
I think the biggest one that seems the most obvious to me is just that technology has advanced a lot since the first photo, and the way we get around has changed a lot. Our modes of transportation, which is also related to technology.
Mhm. If the colorful picture is of Manhattan, I know that Manhattan's very popular and they have a lots of skyscrapers there. People want to do businesses there, and also rich people want to own property there. So I think that that would make the prices go up. I think the older picture, maybe there wasn't as much business or many people who had lots of money. Maybe they worked in factories and so that's why it seems like it's more residential and lived in.
And so as we move on, we can see some different responses from different types of students. So even in just the discussion between Conan and Kate, at first they were just describing things very basically, kind of like what you would expect from lower level students, remembering and understanding from the Bloom's taxonomy, describing what they see, focus on comparatives in terms of grammar and adjective-based vocabulary development. So we have an example of what that might look like in written form on the next page. So these photos show this. They're both busy, older, newer, kind of like this. This is the kind of output that you might get from lower level students. And so then what Conan and Kate were doing was kind of the next level. They were analyzing and applying a little bit. I was trying to help use guiding questions in terms of some urban planning, history, economics, technology. We talked about all those things. And then the students would comment on and suggest additional perspectives. And then finally, and here's kind of the actual output that you might get from a written. written version for this. And then if students were to take this up kind of a higher level, create and evaluate, they could critically engage with the images, perhaps create their own series. And if depending on what the time involved and what the course was involved and what the goals were, then you could even perhaps use a multimodal approach with video, still images, posters, and kind of any other kind of creative things that could be involved. And of course, learner autonomy is emphasized.
So here we have a heuristic that is very helpful if you want students to engage critically with interrogating a photograph. So we have questions like, how does the image make you feel? What elements can you see in the foreground, background? And more critically, what message does the image transmit? So this is a good tool for getting students to delve deeper into the meaning behind a photograph.
And this relates to, we were talking about visual literacy earlier, and so this is the chart we're talking about. And Karima had a question earlier about what questions can we have students ask? And so this is a really nice list of questions of how you wouldn't say, well, what does this photo mean to you, but more specific things that you can ask the students.
Okay. So now we have a couple other activities that we're not going to have time to play, but we wanted to show for you to consider maybe employing in your classroom. And the first one is called iconic image activity. On the screen, you see the objectives and the preparations. And so when you're ready to play this or try this out, here's how you do it. So on this screen, the first step is for the teacher to choose an iconic image. And we've chosen the Statue of Liberty as our iconic image. And then the next step would be for the student to choose an image that relates. And then they would go and find a photo on one of the approved resources that we're going to talk about later. And so here the student has chosen a picture of a basketball player dunking the ball. Now, the student doesn't need just to find the image, they also have to explain and defend their choices. And this could be done, as in a written form or in a verbal form. Now, the extension would be to add another image to complete the sequence. And so here we see a series starting off with the iconic image, but ending in a staircase. So Dave, if you were the student, how would you defend the two choices?
Well, the statue is lifting its torch up into the sky. That's the Statue of Liberty, very famous U.S. landmark. And with a basketball player, the basketball trying to lift the ball up into the sky. But at the same time, the ball goes up and down and, dribbling the ball up and down the court. And then with a staircase, the kind of the definition of a staircase is going up and down. So you might be surprised when you're working with your students that the connections that they draw, perhaps in some cases, connections that wouldn't have ever occurred to you, which can be quite fun.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dave. Now we'll move on to the next activity that we'll share with you and you can explore later. And this is called a visual jigsaw activity. So here are the objectives and procedures. And this is a pretty simple activity to employ. Basically, you just need to find a photo and provide some paper and writing utensils for students. So students would work in pairs, and the first student is the describer. They have the image, they look at it, but they don't show their partner. The second person is the sketcher, and they are the ones with the paper and the writing utensils or the drawing utensils, and they need to try to draw out what is being described to them. So the describer would describe the image and tell the partner what they're seeing. And the sketcher is trying to best represent this, but also ask questions so that they get more information about what they need to the detail. So,
And now we're coming into the final section of our presentation. And so you may be saying, well, that's all nice and wonderful, but how can I actually make it work in my classroom? So we have some specific ideas on how to adapt for different contexts. So particularly adapting for different contexts, different levels of technology, finding the photos. So that's what's coming next.
so before we get into this, maybe think to yourself, how could you adapt these ideas and activities to your own context? I'll give you just a few moments. Maybe you already have some ideas that you've been considering as we've been presenting. Kate, are you muted? Oh, okay.
All right, there we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, so we have, well, we had one question from Karima about one of the comments, I think, was she was wondering if you're not supposed to focus on writing with beginner students when you're using photography, or if it's okay to focus on writing.
No, you can. I mean, if you want to be a verbal activity, just to prompt speaking, I mean that's perfectly fine. You all know your learners, and you know what they need to work on. So please adapt for your own context and your learners' needs.
And
Good. Uh-huh.
and then working on writing might be have a little more time for revision. And so if that was an activity that you wanted to take a little bit more time with, that could work like that.
Very nice. Thank you. Yeah, so some other ways that people can adapt. Let's see here. We have um, they could look at the relationship between photos and the iconic image activity. That's a great idea. They
Mhm.
could have photos related to their own culture or history. Wonderful idea. They can use these ideas to brainstorm ideas before teaching. And I think Rosa's talking about teaching the used to grammar construction.
Good.
By talking about real problems in my country, such as in tourist places, etc. They can use photos. That's a great idea. Maybe to see how tourism has changed an area in your country. To discuss local history and culture. Wonderful. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
So we told you earlier in the presentation that would tell you some nice places to find photographs. We like these three websites, Pexels, Pixabay, and Unsplash. And so there are some differences between them. They have strengths and weaknesses, like everything does. So Pexels does have photos and videos, and we think that it has a better better filter function than Unsplash. And if you like to use Canva for editing, then you can do basic editing in their platform already. Pixabay also includes photos, illustrations, vectors, and other media. We talked about using multimedia activities at the kind of the C1, C2 level. That might be something that you can find in Pixabay. And Unsplash has photographs and illustrations. But of course, every website needs to try to make money. And so they have their paid photos sprinkled throughout. And of course, they know what sells. And so some of the really cool photographs are like that. But hopefully you'll be able to find good photos in one of these sites, one way or the other.
Right. And most of the images from today's presentation were taken from Unsplash. So there's lots of variety and lots of very good, high quality photographs that are available for free.
Unsplash, interestingly enough, has some US specific relationships with different institutions, including the New York Public Library, Art Institute of Chicago, and Cleveland Museum of Art. They also have relationships with the Library of Congress, very famous for its photographic collection, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, so pictures of weather, and then also some different relationships with museums around the world, including the Museum of New Zealand and Europeana. Did you look at the New Zealand one, Conan?
I did, and I especially like this. And I think that it speaks to what we're trying to convey today, that, photographs can be a glimpse into another culture, another time. Um, I liked the sepia tone quality of these old archival photos of the culture of Oceania in the 19th century. So, these are a good way for, us to explore other cultures and history, but also for our students to do the same, and hopefully that elicits them to produce language. So we're going to talk about adapting these activities for different contexts, and we'll talk about three different contexts. And so maybe you're teaching in a high resource context, and this is somewhere where in your classroom, the students have access to computers, maybe even smartphones. And in the class, there's probably a monitor or an LCD projector where you can display things. Uh, and more importantly, this kind of context has reliable Wi-Fi or internet. So in this context, students are able to take photos and using their smartphones and share them easily, or they can find images on the online repositories that we talked about. You are able to display photos with a classroom projector. So once students find things, it's easy to share and discuss. And they possibly could share this, online in a gallery or, in a cloud-based folder.
However, you might find yourself in a medium resource context, perhaps where you do have a projector, although maybe not terribly a powerful one. You might have some internet, but perhaps it might not be powerful enough for all of the students to be using it at the same time, might not be able to handle that kind of bandwidth. And so maybe what needs to happen in that kind of a situation is if you can upload the photos from some resource, a place that has higher degree of internet, maybe at your home or in some different part of the building or different uh, building. And so then you can get the photos and show them that way. Perhaps you need to print out some of the photos, and you can even laminate them for reuse, and then perhaps post printed photos on walls or put them at rotating small group stations.
Okay. And so the final context might be a low resource context. And this is where, there's limited or non-existent access to computers and smartphones, and the internet might be unavailable or limited in most of the time. So in this context, you can still promote visual literacy activities by using hard copies of images. Teachers can go old school, cut out images from magazines, newspapers, calendars, postcards. These are all possibilities. And in these situations, you should repurpose your printed photos for multiple activities, across different lessons. And finally, you can seek out support from corporate or NGO partners for, donating printed materials or providing funding for more visual resources.
So, of course, there are some other additional considerations. It is important to choose relevant and culturally appropriate images. And so we live in the Middle East, and so we have to think about that all the time. And additionally, sometimes we want students to see people that are like them in situations like they're used to. But at the same time, sometimes it's good to expose them to something different. And so it's up to you as the teacher in the classroom to decide which one is best for your students for a given activity. Also, you can cover or blur sensitive elements if they're physical, or if you can use the crop tool if they're digital, or perhaps even blur out some of the things there as well. Also, we need to teach and model ethical use. If you were to download our presentation, you would see that on every page we have the attribution information. So I put the attribution for this particular photo here on the screen in front of you. And with Unsplash, for example, they don't require that you do image attribution, but they do request it. They're thankful, and of course, the artists who have their work displayed on these websites are happy if their name gets around and perhaps gets them some extra work. But of course, then another question happens. Well, what happened? Well, what about AI? Conan, do you use AI with image generation?
Well, I use AI every day for, most aspects of my life, but I also use it to generate images. And sometimes, I want something specific that's appropriate for our context. But oftentimes I try not to do things that are photorealistic. Instead, I try to do things that are more like illustrative or have kind of more of a graphicness so that I'm not passing off an AI images as, actual reality.
And so it is an incredibly powerful tool. It's incredibly useful. But at the same time, some artists are concerned that you might be stealing their work if their work gets put into the visual model that the AI draws from. And of course, some companies are even finding out that if they don't use their AI uh, well, that some private information can get out into the public, and they're not happy about that. And of course, that's specifically for concern of using images without consent, particularly in terms of minors.
Good. So this is bringing us to the end of our webinar. We hope the ideas we shared today have been useful. And as we wrap up our webinar, let's take a few moments to type in the chat. Would like you to type in one idea from today that you would like to explore more deeply after the session. And we have some time. Let's hear what you have to say. We're very curious, Dave and I.
Yes, everybody, let us know what your thoughts are on what is an idea or an activity that you would like to explore deeper after this session. And we have some really nice comments coming in about culture. Let's see. Saeed Mauricio said that a lot of the materials that are in his area are not very appropriate for the people that live in the forest near there. So anything that's really real and authentic is the most powerful thing. And a
Mhm.
lot of other people commenting also on really trying to get images that are real and that people can relate to in your classroom.
Right. And that might involve the teacher going out and and developing their own photographic skills to kind of capture the images that, connect with their students and, the situations around them.
Absolutely. And some other ideas people are saying they'd like to take from today's session are the techniques that you all shared, like negative space or framing, using photos from storytelling, photographic comparison or time traveling people would like to explore, photography genres and a lot of activities to use in the lesson. So some of those genres can really help students develop that keen eye and those critical thinking skills.
And I
Hikma
think,
says this, oh, go ahead.
oh, I was going to say that the techniques aren't just, for photography. If you enjoy movies, you'll be able to notice the things that directors are doing in order to manipulate you and to kind of to add meaning to the images.
And even if you have students who are taking art classes, these sorts of the visual literacy applies to those cross-curricular things. And in perhaps what you could even do is if you are in a context where you could work with another teacher, if that's maybe even considered to be a valuable thing, that you could have something like with a visual art teacher, and then maybe have some written language output or description to go along with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Sandro says that they want to use pictures from their city and then compare them with pictures from other cities, maybe in
Right.
the country. That's a great idea.
Hmm.
Um, so Ferengi really liked the jigsaw, visual jigsaw activity. And so let's see, Hikma liked the time traveling. Irada says it'd be great to use photos of places around the world, definitely. Ask students for images about an important event that's about to take place in their city and have them talk about the social impact of that event. That's a great idea from Leopoldo.
Nice.
And let's see, one more from Sandro. Have my students choose different pictures from our city and compare them with other cities. So yeah, thanks everybody. Those are really great ideas.
Thank you. So, Dave and I hope you continue your exploration of photography and visual literacy, and we hope you consider how it can support and enrich English language teaching. Thank you very much for joining us today, and
And as we look at the very last page that we have for you today, of course, Kate has some announcements after we're done, but there's some references that hopefully, if you're interested, you can follow up and learn more about this. And so we've enjoyed being with you today. So thanks for joining us in this session today.
Thank you so much, Conan and David. And we have so many people saying, like Professor Mauricio, fantastic, thank you. Thank you for sharing from Karima. Today's presentation was very productive from Grasmaro. What an amazing technique to compare and analyze two photos. Thanks for sharing these techniques from Open Alumni Sarek. All the activities were great. I especially liked pastime versus modern photo from Mariana. So thank you, everybody. Um, and thank you so much for your ideas, your engagement, your participation. And please continue to share your ideas through social media or with your viewing groups after the session ends.